Let's talk some UVA basketball with the news of the season here. Chris Graham, Augusta Free Press. Yeah, the last time I talked with everybody here, it was about the coaching search. The coaching search is over now. Ryan Odom, the most recently at VCU, is now the head coach. As you know, you're watching this, you know that already. And so our reporting odyssey dating back to July of 2023, actually June of 2023, which began with us when um, Ron Sanchez gave up his head coaching job at Charlotte to take an assistant job at UVA, a couple $100,000 pay cut, which signaled to us here at AFP that something might not be right in the Tony Bennett system. Maybe his days were numbered. We kind of figured that out in the spring of 2024. Fall of 2024, he did what we had expected and stepped down. We went through the interim season with Ron Sanchez the last 5 months. As a search was ongoing, we reported to you a list of finalists that included Ryan Odom, who emerged as one of the top two of those five early in the process. And then late in the process, we reported he was the number one target. And turns out, yep, he's the coach. So I'm talking here on Tuesday. On Monday of this week, Ryan Odom met with the media and the public in an event at the John Paul Jones Arena, 350 people or so in attendance. I counted. I stood up at the top of the not of the whole arena, but of the lower level there. There were only so many seats in the media section, and not one for me. So I I looked from above, and I did some reporter things like us counting the number of people there, and 20 members of the media, the 12 or 13 members of the basketball team, a few coaches visiting from VCU, and then VAF donors and lots of fans. Actually, I was surprised by the number of fans who showed up on a Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock for a live event like that. I'm surprised and impressed with that. The rollout there for Ryan Odom, who is a guy that is, in one sense, you could say he was born for this job. His father, Dave Odom, was an assistant coach at UVA from 1982 to 1989 under Terry Holland, the first legendary UVA basketball coach, whose all-time wins record at the school was eclipsed just not too long ago by Tony Bennett, who now Ryan Odom is effectively replacing. Ryan was in third grade when his dad took the job with Terry Holland and grew up as a ball boy within the UVA basketball program over at University Hall, which no longer exists. He was literally the poster boy for the summer camp brochure for a couple of years there. And now, all these many years later, Ryan Odom is back at UVA, and this has got to be his dream job. I mean, let's just say it. I know there are still some out there who are thinking that, boy, he's going to just use this job to get a better job. A lot of us think there's not a better job in America. Um, so I've been doing some things. I've been having some fun with this the last few days, trying to get folks ready for this new Ryan Odom era of UVA basketball. So I'll go in reverse order because on Sunday, that's where I'll end up. But on Sunday, I wrote a column where I went into great detail about the Ryan Odom style of basketball, his approach to basketball. Trying to do a primer to get folks ready. And it's going to, obviously we won't see this team play for 7 months because the season will start in early November. So a lot's going to happen between now and then. An entire baseball season will have come and gone by then. And I mean Major League Baseball, college baseball as well. We'll be two-thirds of the way through football season before we see this basketball team play its first game under Ryan Odom. But yeah, I wanted to get folks ready. So I'll go into the details of the numbers after I go into sort of what Ryan had to say about his approach to basketball. The way I wrote the story that I wrote last night about this was the new UVA basketball coach introduced himself to the fan base that learned to go crazy for shot clock violations with three words they hadn't heard in succession for 16 years. I love offense. That's what Ryan Odom said. It was one of the things he said yesterday. Um, The heavens I'm noted in the story did not part as he said the words. He tempted fate, but he was not struck by a bolt of lightning from on high. He wasn't fighting it though, quite clearly, speaking sacrilege about offense in the house of the patron saint of the pack line. Another quote from Ryan: "We certainly want to play fast in transition, and we want our guys to get out and run." This Ryan Odom guy loves offense. He wants to play fast. He wants to run. First perspective would be no way this works here. Um, I will point out a few things. The topic of 2018 did not come up in the presser yesterday. It will. The national media has made note of, with the obvious. Ryan Odom was the coach of UMBC in 2018, that 16 seed UMBC that beat the one seed UVA team by 20 points in the first ever 16 over 1 upset in NCAA tournament history. We're going to hear about that a lot, whether you want to or not. So I'm just prepping you. It's going to be a few months, but when you turn your TV on and watch this team play, you're gonna hear that, and you're not going to like it, but you're going to hear it. Um, he's not overselling the want to play fast aspect to what he had to say yesterday. His last five teams, I looked this up, have averaged between 65.6 and 68.6 possessions per game. So basically 66 to 69 possessions per game. The last five EVA teams have averaged between 59 and 61 possessions per game. So we're talking, 7 to 8, 9 more possessions per game that you'll see from the home team. That's 7 or 8 or 9 more times to score for the UVA team. And the I Love offense line, his last five teams have averaged between 70 and 78.2 points per game. The last five UVA teams have averaged between 62.4 and 68.2 points per game. So, yeah, you're going to see more points scored. You're going to see a faster pace of play. It felt to me, and I was up at the top of the lower level, kind of watching everybody's reaction in addition to, hearing the words and seeing him on the big screen, since I've taken advantage of the fact that I didn't have a seat in the media section. That's what part of being fringe media is all about. It seemed like he was kind of recruiting, and a seventh guy. And we'll talk about the transfer portal later in this podcast. But a seventh guy has entered the transfer portal now, six yesterday. Today, a seventh guy, Jacob Kofi, entering the portal. All could, all or some could come back, and we'll see how that goes. But it seemed like what he had to say, okay, so he was talking, and he would look to his right when he talked about, and where the basketball players were seated in the audience. He would look to his right when he talked about, I love offense, I love to play fast. Almost like, okay, and he talked about when he played at Randolph-Macon and also was a coach in D2 at Lenoir Rhine, his first full-time head coaching job 10 years ago, how they like to shoot threes. He liked his team to shoot threes. They made like 12 and a half threes a game that year at Lenoir Rhine. It was like he was recruiting those guys. And of course, also this went out live over ACC Network. It's on YouTube, it's on Facebook. And so, recruiting other people too. But he was talking first and foremost about, I love offense. I love playing fast. I love shooting my teams to shoot threes. To the guys sitting there that he told us put through a workout before, earlier in the day on Monday, with Chase Coleman, Kyle Guy, Isaiah Wilkins, Mike Curtis. Um, and so, yeah, hey, if you felt constrained at all by Tony Bennett's style of play, if you want to, play faster, if you want to have more freedom on offense, hang around with me and you can do so. As I mentioned, now seven of the players, in addition to Jacob Kofi, who's in the portal today, Day Ames, Isaac McNeely, Andrew Rohde from the backcourt, and from the front court, Blake Buchanan, TJ Power, Anthony Robinson, and now Kofi entering the portal. Odom indicated he will be talking one-on-one with those guys over the next week, and that one thing he said he's already told the guys who are holdovers is that there's no judgment. He said if you put your name in the portal, this situation is what it is. They have to figure out what's best for them, Odom said. We have to figure out on our side. Obviously, that they understand we have to figure out what's best for UVA and this program going forward. My job is to communicate and find out, why did you choose Virginia? What did you like about this place? And ultimately, we'll have to come to a decision. Do they want to stay? Do they want to find another situation? Either way, there are no hard feelings. That's Odom's words. Um, he noted that those meetings to him are a key focus in this first week. I mean, he's got a lot of things to do. He wants to recruit the portal. He's got to flesh out his staff talk about that here in a second. But re-recruiting his players is a big part. Um, as far as the staff goes, he's already formally named Griff Aldrich his associate head coach. Griff Aldrich was most recently the head coach at Longwood. Aldrich is a UVA law grad who played college ball with Odom at Hampton-Sydney, a D3 school, under legendary coach Tony Shaver, a guy who liked to play fast. Um, Aldrich was in private practice as an attorney for 16 years after a one-year stint as a graduate assistant head coach or graduate assistant coach, excuse me. Um, but he coached AAU ball during that time. He never really, got away from basketball entirely. And then when Odom got the job at UMBC, he actually Aldrich went with him there as the director of basketball operations, a low-paying job, gave up a law job, a lucrative law job for a relatively low-paying basketball operations job. Then after 2 years at UMBC, took another low-paying job as the head coach at Longwood. Not making a lot of money there, but he was a head coach, and that's what he wanted to do with his life. So he brings the analytical perspective of a trained lawyer, a guy who worked in private practice for 16 years, and now he'll be coming back to UVA where he got his law degree to be the associate head coach. That's a big jump. Now, I don't know that this is formal yet as I'm talking. I don't know. I think it probably is, but during the press conference yesterday, Odom gave shout outs to VCU assistant Darius Theus and two of his staffers, Bradford Burgess and Ahmad Thomas. I have to imagine that the fact that they were there and he gave them shout outs is an indication that they're going to be coming with him to Virginia in some capacity. I would imagine Theus, obviously, as an assistant, he's coming from VCU as an assistant, and perhaps Burgess and Thomas moving up from the staff, the second bench, to the first bench, more formal. You can have five full-time assistants, and perhaps those guys have a shot at that. In addition to Aldrich, and then we'll see because he name dropped yesterday Chase Coleman, Kyle Guy, Isaiah Wilkins. Maybe there's opportunities there for guys to either be staffers or assistants. I have to see. Nothing is in stone as far as I know about that. Um, so that's sort of the word there. Now, I promised, and I'm going to follow through with this now. Uh, he talks about Odom talked about like he likes to play fast, he likes offense. And so, I think it's good for me here to go into the what UVA basketball fans need to know about Ryan Odom from the style standpoint, the numbers, the analytics standpoint. I mentioned the faster pace of play. Virginia Commonwealth averaged 5 possessions more per game last year than UVA did. The first adjustment we need to make is just going to be it's going to be faster. VCU averaged 12.3 fast break points per game last year. Virginia averaged 4.1. So you're going to see team, his UVA team is going to take opportunities. They're going to look for opportunities and take them to try to push pace from a fast break perspective. Tony Bennett's teams and Ron Sanchez's 1 year as interim coach with the Tony Bennett philosophy. That's not part of the game plan. That's not part of the philosophy. Um, that willingness to run is going to help with recruiting. We already saw that with all the guys in the transfer portal. We got a commitment on Saturday, literally hours after UVA formally announced Ryan Odom as the head coach. The word had started slipping out Friday. But Saturday, Chance Mallory, the nation's number 2 ranked point guard in the class of 2025, who happens to be a local kid from Charlottesville, plays at St. Anne's Belfield, senior at St. Anne's Belfield. He committed to UVA. After committing back in the fall and then decommitting when Tony Bennett stepped down, Mallory is back in the fold, and he will be playing with this Ryan Odom group, and he's sort of the first guy, with everybody else right now in the transfer portal. He'll be the first guy on the roster for next year, and sort of the guy to build around as far as that goes. So faster. I love offense. The Rams. I mentioned he talked about how his teams shoot more threes. Last year, his VCU team shot 28.6 3-pointers a game, 22nd most nationally. There's 364 teams in D1, so that's top 7% nationally. Virginia shot 22.2, which ranked 203rd nationally. So 6.5 more attempts per game from three. It's not all bombs away, though. This VCU team doesn't just, 47.7% of their attempts from the field last year were threes, but they also averaged more attempts at the rim than the UVA team did last year. 16.8 shots at the rim. from VCU last year. 26.2 shot attempts in the paint. Virginia averaged 13.8 shots at the rim and 22.5 per game in the paint. So significant numbers there too from a percentage standpoint. You're talking 20-25% more attempts, in the paint and at the rim for the Ryan Odom style versus the Tony Bennett style. Uh, where the difference is, so you're shooting a lot more threes, a lot more shots from point blank with the metrics shots, less far fewer attempts. In fact, half the attempts from the mid range. Those jumpers outside the lane, but inside the 3-point line. Contested 12, 15, 17 footers. Largely, VCU averaged. Let's see, what was that number here? 6.8 per game. Virginia averaged. Let's see, it was. Oh, where is this number here? It was double. It was 13.1 per game. So VCU hits the boards more, 13 offensive rebounds per game, less than 7 per game for UVA. More second chance points created. Um, and it's not because Virginia teams weren't tough with Tony Bennett. It was that the philosophy was, okay, we don't want to fast break ourselves to get ourselves out of position to play defense, and we don't want to get ourselves out of position after we shoot the ball. So Tony's teams would actually, the emphasis was get four guys back. We'll send one offensive rebounder, and then if it happens, sometimes you'd see two or three guys sometimes, but the philosophy was one guy offensive rebound and then four guys drop back. So to kind of play like a neutral zone trap in hockey almost. Um, and so if your emphasis is drop guys back, you're not going to get as many opportunities for offensive rebounds, and certainly Virginia didn't get that. Again, the Odom approach is much more analytically sound. You get more shots at the rim, you get more 3-point attempts, you get more offensive rebound kickouts, um, few shots from the mid range, and well, it's bothering me that the mid range shots I'm not seeing in my little notes here because I had that in here. Um, but oh, here, I'm sorry. It was 3 point. I had the numbers wrong. 3.9 mid-range jumpers per game. Virginia averaged nine. So correction on those numbers. It was one of those things. We got all these notes here. Um, a funny thing is, you might think, all right, so they play faster. They're a little more risky basketball with more fast breaks. If you fast break and something happens wrong, that opens up an opportunity for the other team to fast break. If you send more guys on the offensive boards, and you don't get the board, that can open up more opportunities for fast breaks. And so you're scoring more, but the other team's scoring more. Huh, gotcha. Last year, VCU actually gave up fewer points per game than Virginia did, 62.9, ranking 10th nationally. Virginia gave up 66.8. You kept hearing even on ACC broadcast this past season, Virginia's still ranked near the top of the ACC in scoring defense. VCU was 4 points per game better last year than UVA was. So that tells you that even though VCU scored 76.9 per game, Virginia scored 64.8 per game, that, opening yourself up, giving yourself more opportunities at easier baskets, either in transition or at the rim or open threes, doesn't necessarily open you up to then giving up more opportunities for easy baskets. Um, yeah, part of that is that just like the Bennett system, the Bennett system, the emphasis on defense was to help the offense in a different way, though. Virginia's defense under Tony Bennett wasn't oriented towards creating live ball turnovers, really turnovers of any kind. It was really just to make you work hard, miss a shot, then we clean the boards up and we get the ball back on offense. We'll run more efficient half court offense than you do. Most of the game, if not all of the game, will be played in half court offense, and we'll just play it more efficiently and beat you. Um, the VCU system, the Ryan Odom system, will work to create those live ball turnovers. In fact, VCU got 16.2 points per game off of turnovers last season, five more than UVA scored per game last season. VCU averaged 8.2 steals per game, which was a top 20 national number. Virginia averaged 5.5. VCU averaged 5.4 blocks a game, UVA 3.8. I mean, it might not sound like a lot in an individual game. Three more steals, two more blocks, five more points off turnovers, four and a half more. So five more points off second chances, but it all adds up. Um, and overall shot attempts per game is the one that really jumps out at me. I noticed this because, I mean, I kind of gave the indication earlier. We had we had the notion sometime back in December that Ryan Odom was going to be one of the top two candidates, and we started covering VCU more actively. If you paid attention to Augusta Free Press this basketball season, you noticed that we gave a lot of time and attention to the VCU George Mason A10 race. Much more attention than we've given to the A10. Deservedly so this year. It was a fun race. Those two teams ended up tying for first in the A10 regular season. Played a thrilling A10 championship tournament championship game. VCU won by 5, but it was a 3-point game with a few seconds left. Mason missed an open three that would have tied it and sent it to overtime. Great race, great results between those teams. Fun to watch. Two state teams, but we did all that attention because we were watching VCU because we knew that Odom was a guy that was getting a really serious look to be the perhaps the next head coach of Virginia, and we wanted to learn more about his approach. And one of the games that we covered in depth, VCU had something like 19 more shot attempts from the field than their opponent in that game. So shot in the like lower mid 30s and won by double digits because of the emphasis on offensive rebounds and forcing turnovers. Um, Over the course of the season, VCU averaged 5.1 more shot attempts per game than their opponent, so an average of 5 more shot attempts per game. Virginia, I didn't know this intuitively, but Virginia averaged 2.3 fewer shot attempts per game than their opponents. It makes sense though. You don't emphasize turnovers. You want to make the other team miss shots, and you don't emphasize offensive rebounds. So you're not gonna create more opportunities that way. You're just gonna try to maximize your opportunities and minimize the other team's opportunities. Well, the VCU approach is get more shots, get more higher percentage shots, more high yield shots in terms of either threes or shots at the rim, and you don't waste possessions on mid-range jumpers. That is the Ryan Odom philosophy. Um, Now, an odd find inside the numbers. I consulted so many different of my subscription services. Ken Palm actually had this one. It's one that's been sitting there looking at me for years. I just didn't use it very much. Virginia's defense, Tony Bennett, the pack line defense, is known for making its opponents work to get shots. That's the whole thing here. We're going to make you work hard. You're eventually going to wear down. Virginia actually had a slightly shorter time of possession on defense this past season, 18.6 seconds to VCU's 18.8 seconds on defense this season. VCU on the offensive end ranked in the top 120 in time of possession on offense. So they worked, they didn't, run the shot clock down like we've seen so many times over the years for Virginia. It wasn't a point of emphasis for VCU teams. We'll get out there. We'll take opportunities early in shot clocks. We'll take some transitions, secondary breaks, that kind of thing. But on defense, we're going to still make you work. And so another area where that translates out, I looked at CBB Analytics. I mean, I had so much fun with this on Sunday when I was working this up. You can actually get a number of how many shot attempts per game with 5 seconds or less on the shot clock per team. Virginia averaged just under 9, VCU averaged right at 5. So 4 more shot attempts per game for UVA within the final 5 seconds. I mean, from watching UVA basketball, so many of the shot clocks getting down in the final seconds, you're rushing shots up towards the rim. Those are not going to be the high percentage shots. You want fewer of those if you can have fewer of those, if you need to have fewer of those. VCU, the Ryan Odom approach, is going to work that way. So now in terms of roster and rotation, there are some similarities between Odom ball and Bennett ball. Both go with a base three guard lineup. This past year, VCU went with a starting backcourt of three guards, a 6-0 point guard, Zeb Jackson, and two off guards, Joe Bamaseal and Max Shuggle, both in the 6'4", 6'5" range. So kind of think about Virginia. Um, with a 6'1" guy and Day Ames, who actually was more of a shooting guard. They tried him a point guard for too long this season. He's not a point guard, he's a 6'1" shooting guard. But then the other two guards, 6'4" Isaac McNeely, 6'6" Andrew Rohde. So very similar from an appearance standpoint, right? And then so then two bigs. This year's VCU team had a 6'10" Jack Clark playing the four. Uh, Jack Clark, though, and this is a difference with Odom. He likes a stretch four. He likes a big guy who can play the four position, who can shoot threes. Jack Clark this past season, 34.8% from three and averaged 4.0 attempts per game from three. That's a good number for a guard, much less for a 6'10" power forward. His 2022-2023 team at Utah State had a 6-9 stretch for a guy named Taylor Funk, who shot 37.0% from three and averaged 6.4 attempts from three per game. So, I mean, I'm thinking like a guy like Elijah Saunders, who shot 37% from three for Virginia this year, but really it was it was not by design. You know, in Virginia's system, the mover blocker offense, the predominant base offense, the fours and the fives are setting screens. If you get anything, it's off of a pop. And you know, the Odom system might actually run some actions to get a guy like Elijah Saunders some looks from three. So we'll see. Saunders' name is I don't think his name is in the portal yet as I'm talking. So like, he could have put it in since I started recording this podcast, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him put his name in the portal just because, hey, you're going to maximize your value that way. Okay, so um, I still like the idea. I mean, you got Chance Mallory coming in, the number two point guard in the country. Didn't choose you over Tennessee to come in and sit. I like him to come in and start. He's a 5'11" guy. You know, Isaac McNeely and Andrew Rohde are in the portal. We'll see. I mean, I'm not hearing anything authoritative telling me about what their thought process is, um, or processes, because it's not an individual thing. They're not a collective. They're going to go their own routes, I'm sure. But I'd love to see them both back. I think both those guys could fit in this Virginia system. I'd love McNeely, who was in the top 10 in the country in terms of three-point shot attempts per game. I'd love to see him playing a more free-flowing offense like Ryan Odom's offense. I think Rhodey's probably more a backup at point guard, kind of like I envision like Ty, you know, how him playing the role that Ty Jerome plays now for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Second unit point guard gives you 20 minutes a game in the college game. You can sometimes play as part of your death lineup to finish a game out, but leads your second unit and leads them well and gives you a changeup from the speedier guy in Mallory to the more cerebral approach of Rhodey. I think that'd be great. And then Jacob Kofi put his name in the portal. I'd love to see Kofi back with his skill set, see him improve under the new coaching staff. Love to see Saunders back, but if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think there's a lot that those guys could get from staying around for one more year, especially the fact that uh, McNeely, Rhodey, and Saunders are all juniors, so they're 1 year away from end of eligibility slash graduation. Why pack up and move at the towards the end of your career in that way if you don't have to? I mean, I understand from their perspective if the playing opportunities are better somewhere else and or the NIL money, probably more important. Especially because none of those three are necessarily NBA guys. This is probably the year of their life that they'll make the most money. So I can see that if you get an NIL offer that is too good to turn up, you got to take it. This is your last chance to really make good money in sports, pro sport, or pro sports. Did I say it? But yeah, I think that's certainly something to keep in mind for those guys. Um, so I don't know. That kind of covers a lot, right? Covered the let's see. I covered Ryan Odom joining his press conference yesterday. I talked about the potential with the coaches. I talked about the transfer portal guys. Talked about Chance Mallory. Man, this kind of caught you up. Uh, you know, uh, as we wrap up here, this is a weird time for me. I feel like we've been chasing this down. I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that we've been chasing this down since I was at a Nats baseball game, a Nats Phillies game, and I would actually be going this weekend to see the Nats and Phillies in DC. It's going to be 82 degrees on Saturday. Chance to see some cherry blossoms, so why not get out of the house and for the first time in a while, go out and enjoy some baseball and some great weather. Um, but I was at a Nats Phillies game in 2023 when I got a phone call, news tip. Hey, it's the job at that point, to what I've been told, the Kyle Getter had left the UVA basketball coaching staff of Tony Bennett to take a job at Notre Dame under their new coach, Micah Shrewsbury. Micah Shrewsbury is the coach. Shrewsbury is the coach. Micah, there is Micah, and then his son plays Jaden, I think, is the son, so it is Michael Shrewsbury. So Kyle Getter left to take the job with Penn State. That left an open position on Tony Bennett's staff, and the word had gotten to me that it was down to former Notre Dame assistant Anthony Solomon, who's a UVA grad, and Ron Sanchez, who was, the head coach of Charlotte, had just won 22 games that year. So when Sanchez got the job, I mean, the thought's already in my head. I'm there at a baseball game, in left field bleachers, and I'm already starting to think. I mean, Sanchez didn't give up a head coaching job, making more money to come back, um, for no reason. There has to be a reason. I mean, at that point, there's no smoking gun. It's just there's something here to piece together, and the 2023-2024 season had an interesting feel. Scott German wrote a column after the early ACC season, like, early mid-January, ugly loss at NC State. He was reading Tony Bennett's body language. I called Scott crazy that, because his column was Tony looks like he's checked out. Scott, you're crazy, basically, I said. But I ran the column, but Scott, you're crazy. Season plays out. I mean, it played out the way it did. Virginia got in the first four, got blown out in the first four. We now know, we didn't know then, obviously, at the time, but we now know that right after the season ended in March of 2024, that Tony Bennett was very seriously considering stepping down. Around this time is when the word started getting out, hey, maybe Tony's contract is coming up. I did a public records request and found out that indeed there were only 2 years left on the deal. There were apparently no contract extensions on the table because I asked for that and I was not given that. And so then, did some other public records requests and found out that Ron Sanchez had a longer contract than even Tony did. That's when the ball really started rolling. So what we had thought the summer before kind of led us to, okay, looks like there's a succession plan in place. UVA then threw us a curveball and announced that Tony had signed an extension, a 5-year extension in June that would keep him there through 2031. But we were hearing, and I reported in the summer and into the early fall that Tony had sort of, taken on a more of a CEO role with the program, that he was letting the assistant coaches, Ron Sanchez and Jason Williford, his two senior assistant coaches, lead, the program in lots of ways, lead the all-season workout program, start leading the practices in October. And then on October 18th, we got the word. Actually, it was October 17th. The word came down that Tony was stepping down. October 18th, it was formalized with a press conference. And that, the work wasn't done then from our perspective. We started reporting on the search committee process. Our first published report was December 28th, so about 2 months after the surprise shock resignation of Tony Bennett. And we've been hard at it ever since. And now, it's kind of like the old thing about the dog barking at the car, and the car, cars always go down the road when you're barking at it. Now there's one. Now this one's stopped. What do we do now? I don't know what we do now. We got our coach, got Ryan Odom. I'm a little disappointed to say the least that Virginia didn't take advantage of the situation and go ahead and roll out a whole new way of doing things with having a formalized front office in place with a formal general manager, not just, I mean, Ryan Odom's talked yesterday about hiring a general manager, but it feels like he's going to be hiring more of a director of basketball operations than UVA's hiring a general manager to work side by side with them. And so feels like an opportunity lost, but we'll keep, I guess that's part of my job now is to keep, I love the hire. I think it's a great hire. I can't imagine that they would have gotten a better candidate for this job. A guy who's a UVA, I think grew up literally in UVA basketball. He couldn't do a better job than what Carlo Williams did. Carlo Williams, Wally Walker, the Barry Parkhill, Jim Ryan, the whole group. I mean, they did an incredible job getting a guy that I feel like is very much the right guy. I wish they had gone one more step with, doing the Moneyball approach that I've been suggesting the last few weeks. They didn't. That's fine. But that gives me something to do because I want to still keep on them. In the meantime, all right, let's see. We got the baseball team is struggling. The football team is in spring practice. Spring games coming up here in a couple weeks. a lot to keep up with. If you have any questions for me, anything you want me to look into from a journalism perspective here at AFP, just want to run something by me, drop me a line, please. Email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.